I know Vanita didn't want to, and I didn't ask. Andre, did you want to say something, Andre? Listen, it's wonderful to hear so many different things that came out of that exercise. Let me just say this. One of the things that it was that we wanted to do, that I was kind of testing, everybody was. Number one, I was testing those who were fanners, the actual ones who were giving the directions, what they would do and how they would follow directions. Do you see that? And what I shared with them is that each time I changed the routes. Now, there are so many dynamics. We could have just honestly several different sessions on that actual exercise. But I gave them some simple directions. And it's interesting to denote how some responded to what I gave them. It's also interesting, just from your comments, and I'm saying this off of your comments to that point, how some of you actually took on that role of actually a spiritual shepherd. Because some of you had, like the ideology between you and Brother Terry and you two, you took on the fact that their direction is in my hands. And if I don't give them the right instructions, they're not going to be able to follow me. And then others were more task operated or organizer, like Minister Carmen. She explained in her own vernacular that when the fan went to her right, that caused her to go to her left. Now, for some of us, that may not make sense. To her, it made sense, and that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, what she also said, if you heard her comment, was she said, because that was how I process information. Do you see that? Everybody that has a task-oriented or organizing type of thought process, they have their own ideals. The truth is we all do, but sometimes many of us do not always become forthright in how we may systematically consider or organize tasks or information. Do you see what I'm saying? And then some of us actually were, those who had the fans really were the vision criers. Because really they were the one who was casting the vision, which is kind of part two of that whole episode of that exercise is that the Spirit is actually the wind. That was why follow the wind is so important. What do you do when the Spirit of God is blowing past you to go one direction or another? Even in the time and the place where you may not be able to literally feel him, he is still blowing. You still have to follow, especially when you can't see him, because you've got to learn how to trust him. Somebody said that. I don't know who it was. That you've got to learn how to trust him. And then there were some other interesting comments, honestly, that I've heard throughout, honestly, that ultimately, one of the other aspects of, I think it was First Lady, she said that honestly, that also depicted on different leadership styles. I had not thought of that until she said it, and then it was like, boom, it sure did. Because what I did notice was how some of you all were using your fans. Some of you were really like in somebody's face like this, doing it that quick. And then others were like this. And some of them, that depicted on how they lead. So if it was something that was a big wave, for example, or if it was a little brisk wave, or some of them just, when we did it with the youth, some of them just did like this. They just said, and whatever you felt is how you felt. Now you come this way, you're going to feel it up here, you might feel it down there too. So you might go to the right and the left, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that does kind of also depict a style of leadership. And the truth of the matter is that there's always going to be a time where leaders lead differently. But I appreciate what Candace said too, is that honestly, even though we may have different leadership styles, which we all do, some again are passive, and there are actually more specific terms that we can use to talk about leadership styles. But although some may be a little more passive, some may be a little more aggressive, some might be a little moderate. But the fact of the matter is that we still have to recognize and remember that at the end of the day, somebody is leading and somebody has to follow. Everybody can't be leaders. But in order to be a good leader, everybody must learn to follow. Very simple. But the fact of the matter, too, is some of the other aspects and components that came out in that was also the fact not just of following directions to hear how or see how it would be interpreted, not just to trust the wind as we felt it, but I believe Minister Carmen had also said something to the extent that sometimes we are still busy trying to feel our way through without having any real insight, vision, instruction, or direction. And to push that a little bit further, sometimes we remember the last thing that we were told, but we still don't do what the last thing we were told. Everybody heard the instructions. When you feel the fan, when you feel the wind, you follow it. That was the last instruction that I gave before the game started. She ceased to feel the wind, but she was still moving. Now that could be looked at two different sides. Number one, when God speaks, sometimes he just says it once. And then he expects you just to move. And when you get to a particular point of where he expects you to end up, then he may speak again. But you might not hear anything in between or on your journey. So you have to remember to do the last thing that you were instructed to do. And as leaders, look, I can say this because I've said it before. Honestly, if the last thing that you were instructed to do was basically whatever those instructions were, and you do something different, you saw the ramifications. Because she was aimlessly meandering around. She was nowhere close. Watch this. She wasn't even too far from the place that she started. And she was walking almost in circles. Do you see what I'm saying? And some of us have gotten frustrated because we try to switch up. Because we think that in our own process of thinking, that I need to do something right here. Well, all you need to really do is the last thing that you were instructed to do until the instructions change. Second side of looking at that is that sometimes, listen, we are so busy doing what we were doing, and she alluded to that as well, that sometimes being busy becomes a part of our process. But if we are busy without following complete instructions, if we are busy with just meandering around doing whatever it is that we think that we do, then we end up damaging more things than not. And sometimes causing damage is not really running into things. Sometimes causing damage is wasting time. Because you're compromising what you could have been doing. She could have been way around the corner or whatever the little obstacle was for her particular instruction, but she was still stuck. How many of us have done the very same thing in our own process? We're moving, but we have no direction. You're not doing anything. You're right at the starting line. You barely crossed the starting line. Matter of fact, if she would have kept going and turned around, she'd have went back to the starting line. So the point that I'm making is that God really wants us to understand that leadership is not as easy as what we think it is. And everybody that leads needs to make sure they understand that they have a form of leading. Everybody that leads, they have their own form, their own process of thinking, of interpreting, of trying to put things in order, some type of process to follow, to hear, or whether it is just simply learning what your leadership style may be so that you can follow the wind of God when the wind of God is there. Her and then you real fast, and then we got to get back to this.
Speaking on the cheerleaders.
Oh, we didn't talk about the cheerleaders, did we? Y'all some sad cheerleaders. Sad.
They were great in cheering cheerleaders were back there encouraging and
Mm-hmm.
cheering for their team. As a follower, we have to learn when the cheerleading or the encouraging can become a distraction. And you have, especially when
Oh, the mic.
you know that you have to really focus on hearing God. And there's nothing wrong with the cheerleaders. They were great. But for me, I had to almost block them out so I could focus on where that fan was going.
Good point. Good point.
And even though I didn't move as fast, and I know that Michelle had to do certain things and I would stop, and then she would fan me, and then I knew which direction, because I had to block out. Even though they were cheering, I had to block them out so I could clearly say, okay, God, I need to go this way. And sometimes we can become our own distractions. And sometimes leaders can become the distraction.
Wow.
And you just have to know when you can hear the cheers and the encouragement, and then when you have to say, okay, God, I need to hear you only.
Mm-hmm.
Or okay, wind, I got to follow you, and thank you, but I got to go that way.
Amen. Thank you. That was wonderful. Did you have something? I'll say something about that too.
I just wanted to, speak on just one thing about leadership. One thing I've learned here since I've been working with God is that no matter, when we're here at church, there's an order of there's an order of like as you, the pastor, the instructor, then you have the individuals under you who are the teachers, and then you have us. When we leave the presence of the church, we become leaders. In the community, we're leaders. We have to show and do what you would do, or what God would do when we're out in public. And sometimes you find yourself in a position to where you have to minister, you have to bless, you have to, just as if you would give your tithing on Sunday mornings. And it's not about what I do or I don't need no praise for what I do when I'm out in public or who I blessed or that, because it's not for me to be praised. It's all about God.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But that's what I'm saying. This exercise is all about. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Last thing, because we gotta get into
I was going to say, she kind of beat me to the punch, but cheerleading works in both ways. Because I was doing poorly. When I'm doing poorly, y'all got silent. I couldn't even feel the fan. It was really close. I told her I couldn't feel it. It was so close. And I just said, well, where the world are you? But anyway, you get quiet. You cheerlead. You need a cheerleader, whether you do them right or whether you do them wrong. Somebody need to be in your ear. God will correct you. If y'all had said, boo, you're going the wrong way, that might have been an indicator. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the thing of it is that, and then for me also is working in an area of weakness. I did not sit here and say all that stuff of what happened to me in my experience for my own benefit. Nobody wants to be wrong. Y'all, you be so busy trying to be perfect and get it all right the first time. But here is a person who knows that they're being made and they're working and being developed in their area of weakness. I've got a lot of areas of strength, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm getting redeveloped in somewhere else. Yeah. So some of you guys weren't leaders as you were the leaders fanning, but you found out you didn't give as good direction as what you thought, and that was developing your area of weakness. But I believe that the cheerleaders work in both ways, in multiple ways, as a matter of fact. Yes, they can be a distraction, but when you're doing bad, you need somebody who knows that in your face or in your ear, if you will, or in front of you. Somebody needs to be saying something to you.